The Dan Dix Show.
All right, welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Dan Dix Show. I'm your host, Dan Dix. We're glad to have you joining us here today on TalkNetwork.com. And once again, there's certainly no shortage of things happening in the news to cover all week. Obviously, we have tensions escalating in the Middle East. Things have been brewing there for quite some time, but even in this last week, we're now having Putin saying things like, oh, we hope we may not have to use nukes. And I mean, even just the fact that nukes are being mentioned now, and even that word is coming up, is pretty troubling to me. There's also this historic climate deal that just passed in Paris at the Paris Climate Change Summit. And of course, this is a global deal, and it's legally binding to, I think there's roughly over 200 countries, I think, are eventually going to be getting into this. This is what falls under the umbrella of the New World Order. This is one of these global treaties, these global deals, that's really the first of its kind that leads towards this idea of a one world government. And underneath this one world government, I mean, it's such a huge umbrella, so many topics we can cover. We could spend a whole show on any one of these topics, but one of the things I wanted to cover on today's show, it's a very heavy topic, and this is this problem that people are having all over the world, not just in Canada, but it's with social care workers and these child protection services who are taking children away from parents for really no good reason in a lot of cases. And in fact, I just want to get to my guest for today because joining us on the line today is Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media, and he's been covering this topic for quite a while and everything else. We'll pick Josh's brain today on all the things happening in the world. So Josh, man, thanks so much for joining us here today on TalkNetwork.com.
Well, it's a pleasure, Dan. You know, I've been a big fan of your work for a long time, and I'm always happy to talk.
Sweet. I'm stoked to get your views on the CFS, and for those listening, that's the Child and Family Services, and what they've been doing out there in Manitoba, where you've been covering things. But before we get into that and everything that's going on in the world with Russia and everything else, ISIS, all this craziness, I'm curious if you've seen, just a little bit off topic, but I'm wondering if you've seen this Uber protest in Toronto by these taxi cab drivers. Did you catch any footage of that by any chance? Did you see any of the footage of what happened there?
I did see some of the footage, and it's absolutely ridiculous that when people try in their own way to free the market and actually bring more jobs to people without government intervention, that it turns into a riot, that it turns into this kind of BS that we're seeing in Toronto and other places around the world as well, where Uber, in my personal opinion, and this is without extreme research into the topic, but Uber, in my personal opinion, is one of the greatest companies to come out in a long time, only because it allows people to work when they want. It allows employment to anyone who has a license, basically, that it doesn't have some kind of crazy criminal record, and it allows people to make money, and of course, these cab companies are complaining about Uber because they put up their profit margins extremely high so that people are paying way more than they really should be, and it comes down to public demand. The public demands that they pay less for their cab fare. So Uber obviously trumps the cab companies.
That's right. Somebody built a better mousetrap, so to speak. So that's truly that's what a true free market is really all about. And these protesters in Toronto just don't seem to get that. This one guy was violently attacking this car. Now, these taxi cab drivers, for the listeners, maybe people don't realize that in somewhere like New York, for example, I'll just give you some statistics to give you an idea of what their problem is with this. Back in 2013, the cost to get a license for a taxi cab in New York was $1 million. for a license to get a cab. And now, because of Uber, over the last few years, the cab companies have had to drop that in order to get people. And now it costs I think it's around $829,000 to get a license. So these guys who just paid, $1 million 2 years ago are ticked off that that it's the lower price. But I don't, I tend to think, hey, why not just say, hey, good for you, you got a cheaper deal, and it is a free market, right? That this is a better business, as you said.
It's interesting because it's another example too of how government monopolizes things. People so often blame capitalism for all their problems, but capitalism truly doesn't exist in its entirety today, and what we're seeing in the markets is truly government monopolization, and we're seeing that with Uber, and the government's trying to ban Uber from taking up business in certain cities across Canada and the United States. And it's happening with everything from marijuana laws to the diaphragm controversy, where they raise the price of medicine 5,000%. That's all based on government monopolization over an idea.
Yeah, well, exactly. And right now they're monopolizing over this idea that human beings are heating up this planet, and we're the ones who are at fault for this, and therefore we have to have our carbon footprint taxed. We have to lay down the law in order to save the planet. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we touched on that briefly in the opening. What are your thoughts on this whole global climate change idea in general? I mean, it used to be global warming. Now they've changed it to climate change.
Yeah, and we can't forget that at one point it was an ice age and all that. And, it is an agenda that's been playing out for a long time. How do you get control of people more? Well, scare them about something that doesn't really exist. I mean, the climate's changed. That's true. That's part of Earth's patterns. If you go back centuries, going back to the 1200s, it got hotter than it is now. In the 1600s, there was mini ice ages in the seas of Britain, and now they're saying, oh no, the weather's changing. Or like Leonardo DiCaprio, what he was saying about Alberta and how when he witnessed a Chinook, he went, oh, there's global warming. I saw evidence of it. It's true. It's just totally moronic, because what's actually happening right now is this agenda to basically be able to tax us on carbon. And I mean, I know you guys have a bit of experience with that out there in BC, but carbon is a solid. It's not a gas. And okay, when you talk about carbon dioxide, that's basically the tree of life itself. Without more carbon dioxide even, you can't grow vast forestry. You can't create oxygen,
It's almost like saying humans are poisonous or something, because that's what we exhale.
Well, we all know that that's what they think. We've seen Ted Turner speak about how he wants the earth depopulated for the sake of the buffalo. I mean, these people are, in my personal opinion, completely insane. We're talking about people like, Elizabeth May going to the Sierra, her work with the Sierra Club. We see people like Bill Gates getting involved, and we know what he said on video, that he wants to depopulate the world by 60%. Mm-hmm. And these are the people involved in things like Monsanto. They also have heavy investments in big oil companies, and then they're coming to us and saying, we need to stop, climate change. No, something we need to change is the amount of pollution we put in the air. That's true to human health. But as for the entire climate, the only way that humans are changing the climate is through things like HARP and things like chemtrails that are openly admitted by our government. Mm-hmm. So it's just such an insane agenda to kind of push towards globalism and be able to create slaves in every aspect of life, because we do see it in every aspect of life, from the TPP to C51 to the monopolization by government of business and enterprise, to the debt slavery that they're pushing us into. And now they're trying to tax us on carbon, like one of the biggest, building blocks of life. It's completely insane to anyone who's really paying attention. And I want to make the point to those that still believe that there is man-made climate change. Go to Jupiter's moons, go to Mars, and look, the ice caps are melting. Come back to Earth and look at the fact that the Earth has been cooling for over a decade, and we have things like glaciers are supposed to recede. It's what happens naturally after an ice age, and then the next ice age comes, and new glaciers are created, and then they melt after that as well.
But now you have people calling someone like yourself or myself, a denier. This is the term that's being thrown around now. It's like you're like a Holocaust denier or something. Oh, you're a climate change denier. It's like, no, we're not denying that the climate changes. Yes, of course, the climate changes. The debate comes in whether or not it's being caused by human beings.
Yeah, the connotations are absurd. I see people like Dr. Tim Ball, who actually came from Winnipeg, very, very intelligent climatologist. The guy isn't rich, and people are just claiming, oh, well, everything that you're saying, you're just saying that because oil companies pay you off. The guy who could do an audit and still show that he's not being paid by oil companies, and people will be so religiously involved in this theory that the world is warming because of man that they still won't believe it.
Have you seen this footage of David Suzuki referring to humankinds as maggots?
Yes, I have. That was back in, I believe, the 70s, and I just loved seeing all the people surrounding him, sitting cross-legged, hippie culture, kind of going, yeah, he's so right. And I'm thinking, okay, I realize that all of the bad things that are happening on the planet for the most part are coming from man, but so are all of the good things as well. So, we can't look at human beings as nothing but maggots, because these people, these eugenicists, when they talk about depopulating the earth, they're talking about killing children and killing innocent human beings. And I try to say we aren't overpopulated. We might have underabundance of food and that kind of stuff, but we're not overpopulated, because you can put every single person on this planet on the island of New Zealand and it would still be less dense than New York City. So the idea that we are overpopulated, I think that's just a talking point that's been passed down for generations by people like Ted Turner, people like Bill Gates, and then like people like Maurice Strong, who I'm sorry, but I kind of popped a bottle of champagne when I found out that he passed.
Well, what these people don't realize, or I'm sure they do realize, but what other people out there don't maybe realize is there's only two ways to deal with overpopulation, if there is such a thing, and that's you can either increase the death rate or you can decrease the birth rate. I mean, it fundamentally it comes down to those two things, and we're seeing it on multiple levels with the increasing of the death rate through the poisoning of our food, the poisoning of our air, the poisoning of our water, through wars being set from the West and the Middle East. We're seeing this now, and that brings us to the topic for today's show. I wanted to get into. We're coming up to the break right now, but on the other side of the break, I want to cover the child protection services. Exactly what are they, and how does it differ? I mean, there's different ones in Ontario, all across Canada. You've been covering the one in Manitoba, and there's been some groundbreaking footage that you've uncovered and some people you've interviewed. So we're going to get that on the other side of the break. Stick around. We'll be right back here on TalkNetwork.com.
Welcome to the Health Minute with the Health Ranger. One of the ways the system controls you and keeps you down is by literally poisoning your brain with toxic heavy metals like lead. Believe it or not, a lot of the supplements and vitamins that are sold out there are actually made by pharmaceutical companies using cheap ingredients that are contaminated with lead. And lead decreases your IQ. The more you eat, the more dumbed down you become, and that's what the system wants. But if you want to explore your maximum potential as a creative, divine, unique individual, you need to keep your mind free of toxic heavy metals like lead. And that's my specialty. I run a lab where we test all the supplements and superfoods that we offer for all the heavy metals, including lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium. And that's why everything that we offer at the Talk Network store is laboratory validated for cleanliness and purity. Protect your brain by feeding it right at store.talknetwork.com.
All right, and we're back. This is the Dan Dix Show. I'm your host, Dan Dix, and joining us on the line is Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media. And just before the break, we were just touching now on this idea of these child service workers coming in and essentially kidnapping people, children away from their parents. And Josh has covered this extensively here in Canada, and there was a groundbreaking case that that you covered, Josh, recently that went viral, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views all across the internet, where a Somalian family had their children taken away from them by the government. And why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit of the background on that story that you broke?
Yeah, well, it's nothing entirely new, because there have been so many cases over time of people's children being taken away for such things as lack of wealth and broken English. And this was the first story I was able to cover firsthand where people were willing to go on camera. Because you have to understand that parents are incredibly scared to come out about these things, because they are told by the Manitoba government here that if they speak out, they'll never see their children again, which is kind of like a mafia tactic. Now, yes, these good parents who came from Somalia to flee what most of us will see as a pretty terrible country to live in when it comes to human rights, they come to Canada, and then their children are taken away, and then they're threatened for daring to try and get their children back. And CFS is one of the more important issues, I believe, in Canada, because it's part of this giant pyramid. People wonder why there are so many douchebags these days, with lack of a better term, why there's so many poor people, while there's so many bad people, why there's so many hungry people, and all these issues. And a lot of it plays into the CFS system, because for decades and decades, children have been taken away without good reason, 90% in Manitoba being First Nations people. And we're looking at CFS actually making money off of each child they take. They make a profit off of it. And we have high-up judges, former attorney generals on our side. We have so many social workers who've become whistleblowers. And what we try to say is that government has no right over the child. Children are not government property. And this idea goes back to like Hitler's Germany, where we saw the exact same kind of protocols. So for years, I've been trying to get to this issue, to the heart of this issue, and it's been very difficult because technically it's against the law for me to be doing the reports I've been doing on CFS. There's actually a law in Manitoba that goes through the CFS Act that doesn't allow me to be able to interview parents affected by CFS, and then these parents aren't allowed to speak out or protest. So there's basically a gag order on anyone who tries to talk about it. And it goes back to the Franklin cover-up in the United States, and I have to mention this because I believe it's tied in. Manitoba has the highest rate of kids in CFS and the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous people. And a big part of that, as many people, many witnesses have told me, they've witnessed $80,000 cars pulling up in the bad part of town and pulling in girls never to be seen again. And I'm thinking back at the Franklin cover-up where it was found that people within the U.S. Senate, governors, aides, all that kind of stuff, they were involved in a lot of the children who had gone missing had become their sex slaves. And there's so many children that came out about it. I don't care what any court of law says. When there are literally hundreds upon hundreds of children coming out saying, hey, this happened to me. They brought me here. They raped me and then let me go. But others didn't make it. When I hear that from a bunch of children, I'm prone to believe them. And we're watching this play over again in Manitoba, where I've been going up to the Premier, Greg Selinger in Manitoba for quite a long time, a couple of years now, and demanding answers. And every single time he says, we are working on it. Well, he isn't working on it because every day in Manitoba, a baby is taken from the hospital straight from birth without any reason for lack of wealth. And what is real wealth? Wealth comes from the family, not from money. And surely not from our debt-based money pyramid system. So I find it just incredibly shameful that you damage kids from a very young age. They grow up in a bad way, in gangs, abused, raped, missing, murdered. And the ones that survive, they grow up pretty badly, pretty damaged. and then they have kids, and then their kids are taken away. It's a circle, and it just keeps going on and on and on.
Well, what are the reasons that are being given for this? I mean, I think you mentioned that they had broken English. Is that seriously what this came down to?
It came down to that. And it's come down to that with many other cases with CFS. When we're talking about a $500 million a year industry in Manitoba alone, and billions across Canada, obviously there's going to be a lot of mismanagement, and we know that everything the government touches turns to crap. So of course, how could we think otherwise when a government is seizing children and taking them as property, as wards of the state, and then pawning them off on abusive families, throwing them in group homes, and in many cases, I should say, throwing them in hotels. They were keeping just a bunch of kids in hotels in Manitoba, and this was a big controversy, but there was no reason for it because they didn't have enough foster parents to look after the kids. And I kept telling the minister, look, if you don't want too many kids in care, stop taking away kids for their parents' broken English, for their parents' lack of wealth, or because their parents smoked a joint years ago and got caught. I mean, it's just absurd. And we've seen that within the States as well with baby Alexandria, who was taken from a family because her parents smoked pot in a garage. Yeah. And when she was in bed, and they took her away and gave her to a guy who murdered her within a couple months.
Unbelievable.
This is like a 2-year-old girl, and she was murdered by the system. And that kind of stuff gets to me so deeply because who doesn't love the idea of children growing up properly, becoming functioning, decent adults? And how is that going to happen when they're raped and abused and drugged and put in gangs their entire childhood?
We had a similar case here recently where Child Protective Services came in and took away a child because of the parents refusing to give the child chemotherapy for his cancer, and he was researching cannabis as an alternative option, and for that, he was taken away because he refused the chemotherapy, and he just wanted to look into other options, and that was enough of a reason for them to take the kid away. Those are the sorts of things we're seeing, all across the board.
It's so horrible to hear these stories. I get probably a couple dozen stories about CFS every day because there are 11,000 children in care in Manitoba at this moment. And about 60% of the children in care when they become adults end up homeless. So that's a huge statistic. So I've been following this to court for several years. I've been following parents to court and watching how they are treated in court. And it's unbelievable the kinds of things that happen just within the family court system as well. I watched one woman go to court for years trying to get her children back who were raped by the father, openly said so. They called the police all the time to complain that they were still getting abused, but they kept saying that the mother told them to say that. When these kids went on a lie detector test, they passed, but then the court said they have no rights in a court of law. And then after that, which is completely insane, this woman accidentally bumped into her son walking down a main thoroughfare in Winnipeg. And all she did was exchange a hug with him and go the separate ways because she wasn't allowed to see him. This is like your average cookie-cutter mother, very, very nice. And in court one day, she was there with the judge, and the judge said, if you want to see your kids again, you're going to stop challenging this stuff. And then she said, actually, we're going to postpone this case for another year because I'm hungry and I want to get to lunch. So she made this woman wait a year to see her child because this judge wanted to go to lunch. I mean, it's just such an insane, this is why I say we gotta opt out of the way government is today, and we gotta look towards, bringing things down to the community level, because the community level is where things thrive. At a nationalistic level, at an internationalistic level, they never work, and we end up the slaves.
Well, like you said, it's just a bunch of bureaucratic BS, it seems. In Manitoba, would you say the numbers were 11,000 kids in there, and 60% of them end up in foster homes? I mean,
11,000 is a very conservative number, but that's the number that CFS is giving.
Now, did you, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I heard you say 90% of these kids are Aboriginal?
Yes, absolutely. 90%. And when questioned about that at, the Minister of Child and Family Services, Carrie Irvin Ross, I talked to her about that yesterday, actually. And this woman would not answer my questions. She just keeps saying, well, we're working on it. We're trying to make things better. Did you see my news, the thing on the news of me meeting with those First Nations elders, and we shook hands and everything? And I just nodded my head and I said, yeah. Shake hands and smile. But what are you actually doing? Because this is so absurd that we have all these SJWs running around seeing racism behind every corner. Mm-hmm. But then where there's actual racism going on by the government's doing, no one says anything. I mean, there is a thing called the Indian Act in Canada that says First Nations people cannot govern themselves. They cannot be sovereign. They must be governed by the Queen. Mm-hmm. This act has been around in Canada since 1876. That is, and by the way, I should probably mention this because this is actually quite disgusting. In this act, it says that First Nations people are less than human. So we see all this, SJW, BS, PC culture all around us. And then these same people that think it's racist to call a black guy black or something won't look at these real racist issues.
Exactly. And what we need is guys like you going out and confronting these people, like the minister, Carrie Irvin Ross. And we're going to play a clip of that coming back on the other side of the break. Stay tuned here at TalkNetwork.com.
Enerfood by Enerhealth Botanicals, voted best and cleanest superfood by Natural News. This 100% green, organic superfood powder is packed with the highest quality, organic, non-GMO, nutrient-dense ingredients. Experience complete bioavailable nutrition in a highly effective, fast-acting, alkalizing formula. Promotes cell rejuvenation, increase your energy, regain mental clarity and focus. Easily digested, quickly absorbed, all natural, vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO. Don't waste another minute of life feeling run down and tired. Gently detoxify the body daily. Order today and feel young tomorrow. Go to enerfood.com. That's ENERFOOD.com today.
Aging is unavoidable, but some seem to do it more gracefully than others. Did you know that it's possible to be one of those people? And did you realize that you can lift sagging skin from home without even having to consider plastic surgery? One of the most notable areas on your body that give away your age are not wrinkles on your face, but on your neck. And by going to trybeverly.com, you can learn how to effectively lift sagging skin at home. Dr. John Lakey is a double board certified surgeon and the director of the Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery Group. He has developed a method for his patients who want to look younger without having to go through surgery and lift sagging skin and take years off their appearance. Go to trybeverly.com and learn how easy it is for you to take decades off the way that you look. Just go to trybeverly, that's TRYBEVERLY.com, and go take control of the age you appear today.
All right, and we're back. This is the Dan Dix Show. I'm your host, Dan Dix, and joining us on the line today is Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media. And just before the break, we were talking about how, Josh, you confronted the Minister of Child and Family Services in Manitoba. Her name is Carrie Irvin Ross. And, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and play a clip of this for the listeners because this is precisely what needs to happen with these people. And just listen to how she handles Josh's questions here. I'll go ahead and play the clip.
We have a good relationship with many of the First Nations leaders. You will have seen that they were standing with us during that announcement.
Yeah, handshake and smile. But look, when there's 90% of children in care that are First Nations, how do you justify the fact that there's only 11.1% of the province is First Nations, but there's close to 90% of children in care are First Nations?
This is not a justification, but there are consequences and traumas that have happened for generations. Residential schools, the 60 scoop, colonization.
And now CFS. CFS.
What we are seeing are the consequences of that. And what you see this government doing every day is to work with First Nations leadership to make a difference. And that happens by more jobs and opportunities for people, education opportunities.
Working with First Nations elders doesn't change the fact that the children are getting taken away, and we look at the fact that close to 60% of the children that come out of care as adults become homeless and
I'm prepared
end up on
to
the
have
street.
a conversation with you, but I don't want to disturb the rest of the guests, okay? So we can talk.
You know what's disturbing is all the children that are being taken away and their lives are being ruined, and then they end up in gangs, they end up on drugs, they end up abused, they end up killed, murdered,
But we also
missing.
need to make sure that we're providing safety for children, and those are the initiatives that we're doing. So thank you very much for coming today. It's very nice to see you.
Sorry, I can't shake your
That's
hand.
fine. You
I'm
don't
not
have
going
to. Very nice to see you.
And
Yeah.
there you have it. I mean, she wasn't having it. I mean, and kudos to you. I mean, great job, at putting her in her place when she's, listen, we have to keep things orderly here. He's like, hey, you were like, is it orderly? Is it right for you to take away the kids? I mean,
yeah, isn't she a piece of work?
that was something. I mean, she, just like most politicians, they kind of answer questions without actually answering questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I have to definitely credit Wendy Bocott of CFS You're Fired, who's been doing great work. She was a whistleblower against CFS and came out against CFS and ended up in prison and ended up with gag orders and was not allowed to protest in front of the Manitoba Legislative Building, all because she came out against CFS after working with them.
Who's that?
It's a woman named Wendy Bocott, and she's head of CFS You're Fired.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned that there are people are contacting you all the time about this. Are there more cases that you're planning on covering coming up, or any that are currently also in the works?
Well, I haven't yet posted my confrontation of Premier Greg Selinger, where my cameraman actually got assaulted by his henchmen. I would call them, not guards. I mean, all they are is henchmen. They're not. But the point is, that'll be up in the next couple days, and I continue to talk to families, as illegal as it is. I continue to talk to families and get their word on what has happened to them. I can't do every case because, as I mentioned, there's 11,000 children in care in Manitoba, which makes about 20,000 parents affected by this in the province of Manitoba. Mm-hmm. But I do my best to, talk to as many parents as I physically can. But there are so many cases. If everyone knew every single case, there would be no CFS. There would be an uprising. It's something that the news isn't reporting on because they're afraid of the laws that stop them from talking about it. But I've always said, I don't care about the laws. If I have a story, if there's a truth and I'm going to put out that truth and I have to get arrested for it, so be it. Then they can come and get me. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But the point is to get these stories out, get the truth out, and hopefully change this entire system, because it is so corrupt, and it is a big part of this globalist New World Order plan to enslave us all and completely take away everything that's dear to us.
Yeah, it is completely corrupt system, but I get contacted a lot of times too with a lot of these stories, and it's tough sometimes to figure out which ones are legit, and because there are cases where kids are taken away, and they should have been. I mean, I know personally some people who have said their kids are taken away, and they want me to do a story on it because of CFS and all this, and I see how they live, with the partying lifestyle, all the drugs, all kinds of craziness, and I think to myself, well, yeah, of course, how do we sift through that, right? It's a tricky.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, man, we got it vet pretty good, because there are a lot of cases where these parents are claiming they're innocent and they're not. But I also have to look at the fact that, first of all, you have to look at a lot of paperwork, and you have to dig through their actual stories to make sure that you can substantiate it. But when it comes to these kinds of things, I understand that there are a lot of people out there that shouldn't have children, but I also believe that there are better ways of handling it than putting them into a government system for the rest of their lives and neglecting them, and they end up in gangs and all that kind of stuff, which happens a lot more than people could ever understand. It's such a huge market for gangs, the children in CFS care. So I would say, like everything, with everything, we have to bring it back to a community level and allow people in a community to decide what they want. Because I always say people in Ottawa deciding stuff for our neighborhood, they've never even been to our neighborhood. So how could they say what they think we should have? And these representatives that we elect aren't exactly representative, as I'm sure you know, because they don't actually listen to the people that elected them. So we need to bring things more to a community level where things will be more able to be vetted, and we'll have a greater ability to basically decide for ourselves what we want in our lives. And if we want government, if we don't want government, it comes down to voluntarism. I personally fall under a voluntarist kind of standpoint. I lean towards libertarian views, but I always say that in this kind of society, in a voluntarist society, socialism isn't a bad thing voluntarily, then it's just charity. But as long as we're not coerced into anything by government. Government has no place in our lives. They're strictly there, supposedly, for us to be able to say, we want this, and then they do that for us as public servants. But we know that every time we see someone running for office, they say, I'm running to become leader of this riding or leader of that or get into power. And those are buzzwords, in my opinion, because these guys aren't leaders. These guys aren't in power. We are in power. We are leaders, and we are the ones that tell them what to do. So let's not, mince words there,
Well, with our current leader, Justin Trudeau.
Same thing.
Same thing, pretty much. What are your thoughts? I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've talked to you since this liberal swing getting a majority. What are your thoughts on Prime Minister of Canada Justin Trudeau getting the seat there?
Oh, I've seen it coming for a long time, and before he even got into office as an MP, I saw it coming, and people keep telling me, well, we got to wait and see what he does. Well, have people forgotten that he's been in office already for several years as an MP, and he does have a record? I mean, this guy voted for Afghanistan. This guy was actually for stricter sentences for marijuana, quote-unquote, crimes. This man has been against or for everything the opposite once he's been elected. And I just find it so funny hearing people say, well, he's going to legalize marijuana. Hey, no one should have to go to jail or be punished in any way by government for smoking pot. It's everyone's right to do what they want with their body as long as they aren't hurting anybody. But with Justin Trudeau, what he's doing is, well, if you've seen the Liberal platform on the Liberal Party website for marijuana, it's a really short little piece. And it basically says that they're gonna be able to control it with more strict regulations and taxes. So what we're going to see is a monopoly, and we're going to watch it kind of play out where, I'll give you an example. In 1985 in Winnipeg, the average price of a quarter ounce on the streets was about $60. Today, it's about $60. So that is a free market. Despite the fact that it's a black market, it's free. So we need to find a way to be able to bring the rights of everyone to smoke weed if they want in a free market kind of way. And it's a dirty word for some reason these days, but free market is freedom, and it allows people to do what they please and allows people to purchase what they please it's just totally fair and free. And Justin Trudeau, we can already see him. He said he's going to be training these rebel forces. How many times do we have to go over this? I mean, going back to the 50s with the Iranian coup, we got Saddam Hussein was armed twice through the Ba'athist Party by the United States. We have Zbigniew Brzezinski, Carter's advisor, arming Osama bin Laden with the Mujahideen in 1979. We've got the Taliban meeting in the White House in the 80s. We've got Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS. ISIS is most important because I believe that they are arming ISIS to basically take over Western civilization, because one day Obama will be saying, well, we need to stop ISIS. The next day he'll be saying we need to arm ISIL forces and insurgents. And it's just so surreal to watch it actually play out, because you and I have been talking about these kinds of things coming for a long time, and now they're here. Now what we have to do is look at people like Trudeau and tell him to his face that he has no right to be arming these violent, drugged-up psychopaths overseas and then creating a problem 1 or 2 years from now. It just keeps playing out over and over again.
Well, people don't seem to be able to see these patterns, and you've laid them all out there, and that's what we need to do is to, like, put these facts on a silver platter. And for instance, like, show people, yeah, look, Justin said he's going to remove the CF-18 fighter jets from Syria and Iraq. He's going to withdraw Operation Impact. And then the same day that he said that, they dropped some bombs on Iraq, on ISIS strongholds in Iraq. And if we don't think that there's going to be potential blowback or anything like this, we're wrong. I mean, Canada is involved in this fight with ISIS.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is amazing when we have all these vigils and everything for the tragedy in Paris, which was a tragedy, whether it was by government or not. But then they go over to Iraq or Syria and destroy a village and kill countless children, and then they're trying to say, well, it was collateral damage. Well, I'm not going to side with ISIS because I think it's one of the most horrific groups we've ever seen in our lifetime. But I mean, which is worse, killing a couple hundred people or killing thousands and thousands of people, or millions over the years as the United States has and Britain? I say that we just opt out of killing people. It doesn't seem like a crazy idea, but people act like it is. We got to stop arming people, then destroying their countries, pissing them off, and then giving them more weapons, and then bringing them over here.
Yeah, well, on that note, I want to touch on that what has now turned into what amounts to a psychological operation in regards to the Syrian refugee crisis and this concept of ISIS militants being embedded with them. We're coming up to the break. We're going to get Josh's thoughts on that on the other side. Stick with us here at TalkNetwork.com.
Did you know that all bacteria prefer to live in what's referred to as a biofilm community? Plaque on teeth and arterial plaque are in fact biofilm communities where mixed multi-species infections support each other against the immune system and against antibacterials and antibiotics. Many chronic conditions are linked to some kind of bacterial infection that is actually a biofilm community. Alzheimer's, autism, ear infections, cardiovascular conditions, prostate and sinus infections are all included in these. This means we can have a dramatic effect on our health by incorporating an anti-biofilm agent. Expose the bacteria inside the immune system to natural or synthetic antibiotics by using biofilm-busting ingredients in our food and in our supplements. Go to Ortix.com. Click the Anti-Biofilm Protocol under the Protocols tab. www.ortix, that's ORADIX.com. Ortix.com.
All right, and we're back from the break. This is the Dan Dix Show. I'm your host, Dan Dix, and joining us on the line today is Josh Sigurdson. And just before the break, we were talking a lot about ISIS and the manipulation going on. And just before the break, we mentioned how this is a psychological warfare with this concept of ISIS, telling us that they're going to embed themselves among the Syrian refugees, and then governments all around the world welcoming in the Syrian refugees with their own populations, worried about a terrorist attack. This is such a mind game on the people. What are your thoughts? And as a voluntarist, what do you think we do when it comes to the borders? Should we open them up and let them in, or should we close them and keep them out?
I'll start with your last point there. It's difficult because being more libertarian-minded, I kind of look at it and say one has a right to bring their body where they wish. They have that sovereign right to bring their body where they wish. But then when it encroaches on property laws and property rights and ends up, destroying our culture and making us have to pay into it, it's something that first of all, I have to make mention of the fact that Muslims aren't a race. So it's not anything to do with racism, and I actually have a lot of great Muslim friends that are obviously not radical at all. There with every religion, you have the pacifists, and then you have the more extroverted people. Now, with the refugee crisis, we look at a lot of these refugees, and they're from Armenia. They're not Muslim, they're Catholic, and they are well off. And they are coming to Canada, the United States, Britain, and Germany, being told, hey, like when back at home, people are telling them, hey, if you go out west, you'll get everything for free. Well, I can't blame them for going, oh, wow, okay, I got to get in that, I got to go to Canada. So it's such a difficult issue for me because there are a lot of people who should get refuge from what the United States and Canada has created over the years. But then there's the side of it where we're looking at a complete demoralization of our culture and divide. And that we're going to be seeing a lot of false flag attacks over the coming years, and it's one of those kinds of things that it frustrates me because we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. No one can honestly say, but we have predictions, and I believe that Obama is actually, and I shouldn't say Obama, his puppet masters are actually creating this kind of agenda in order to bring these guys that they armed and funded over to the United States and Canada and eventually enslave us under their kind of psychopathic system, which is the ISIS, way.
Well, that's another point here is the ideologies of Islam coming to Western Christian nations. I recently made a video, dealing with this concept of is Islam compatible with how we operate here in the West, and people. Some of the comments are ridiculous. People are calling me racist. As you said, it's not a race. It almost seems that it's quite convenient that we're in this politically correct movement right now, so that everybody's saying, well, you can't talk about that. You can't say, you used the word they, or you said foreigners or something, and they just quickly dismiss us as being racist. Meanwhile, this is something that people have been thinking about for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yeah, well, collectivism and logic are basically opposites, but at the same time, there is a fine line. Like, we can't paint all Muslims the same, but there is that part of Muslim culture that should worry people, because it's easy for us to say in Canada that, oh, well, let's just bring them all over here. But when you go to places like in Europe, where there are actually big rallies in the streets demanding Sharia law, this isn't some kind of crazy right-wing talking point. It's actually happening, and PC culture is stopping us from being able to acknowledge that fact, which is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous when, as you said, Sharia law is being accepted with open arms. And I mean, really, let's talk about what that actually implies. I mean, this is stoning to death women for adultery, for example. These are barbaric ways of operating in this time, and and that's why it's obviously very troubling for people to think about this coming over here. Meanwhile, I mean, God forbid somebody should pray in school or mention the Ten Commandments or say God's name. No, that's bad. But go ahead, bring in Sharia law, welcome it with open arms.
Yeah, it's much like Alex Jones has been making a lot of mention of lately, like this idea that we can't celebrate Christmas. Like at the Manitoba Legislative Building, there is a giant menorah on the lawn. That's fine, whatever. But then there is no Christmas decoration at all. And I'm kind of thinking, like, really? Have we become so PC that we can't? Like, I'm not a Christian, but I look at it and, Christmas is enjoyable. It's something fun for the kids. It might not teach the greatest lessons in consumption, but at the same time, it is that time of year that kids love. And to get us through a Canadian winter, I mean, maybe you guys out in BC don't have it too bad, but I know you lived in Toronto, so you know well, a real Canadian winter. And I mean, if we have something enjoyable to do during that winter, like, why try and take that away? And I think it's just, there's militant atheists and then there's militant, extremely religious people. And I say, like, I stand very agnostically on it and say, like, you know what, it's far beyond my comprehension. I'm not going to go there, but I think that we should accept all people equally as long as they aren't, trying to take away our individual rights. And culture, that's another issue where we're watching culture change throughout North America and Europe. Donald Trump was right when he said that there is horrible things happening in places like Paris and places throughout Germany, etc., where there are radical Muslims there. And they are doing ridiculous things, but our ability to speak about that has been completely stifled by these SJW lensless glass wearing, wool hat wearing. Oh, see, I'm stereotyping. Huh.
Oh, I think you just triggered a whole bunch of people out there. Yeah.
Oh no, microaggressions.
Yeah, you triggered with some microaggressions there. People are going to be upset. You might get the feminists on your case now, the feminazis, and that's one I don't think you're going to want them on your bad side.
Oh, it won't be anything new, man. I mean, I've been talking about this for a while, and I'm sure you have similar problems. I saw your Justin is an SJW report, and I thought it was awesome, by the way. And I know that this is just part of telling the truth. You are going to get a lot of hate, and you know what? These people that are saying don't stereotype people, but then just stereotype all white people the same and all men the same, and it's just. We have to get past this. I mean, I think South Park actually has been doing an incredible job of basically exposing this SJW movie.
Yeah. I'm glad they kept with the PC principle, and the whole season has been great. Is it over? I don't know if it's over, or if there's more coming, or if that was the season's finale last week. I don't know.
I hope there's more coming. You know what? Knowing South Park, there will be. They've gone very, very kind of voluntarist libertarian over the last couple of years, because we know back in the day they were very liberal. They went on that Bowling for Columbine movie and did that whole cartoon about gun control and why we need gun control. Yeah. But I think that they've changed drastically since then. And I think the last episode of the season of South Park painted a good picture of that, where everyone got guns and they're like, hey, we can get a lot more done with these.
Yeah, that's true. I think they know when to touch on they got their finger on the pulse of every movement really on pop culture, and they know when and how to press those buttons.
Yeah, and you mentioned Uber earlier in the show, and they actually did a great free market episode on what they called the handy car. And it was basically Timmy who's driving. Right. Yeah, he's driving people around. The cab companies are going, why don't people use the cabs anymore? And it's just full of like vomit. And it's like, well, I wonder,
Yeah.
Some markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still wondering when they're going to start making fun of Alex Jones. I have a feeling that's going to happen sometime soon.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, Alex Jones has been one of the biggest inspirations to me for a long, long time. I know you've worked with him. He is one of the reasons why independent media can thrive these days. But my word of advice to Alex is, stop saying that San Bernardino was a false flag in one sentence and then saying in the next thing, but Muslims are the problem. I find it very off kilter lately. And that's just me speaking truth to word. I still extremely appreciate the guy, and I think that he has done incredible work waking up the masses. And we wouldn't be here doing what we're doing today if it weren't for him.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we got to focus on what we're doing in our own style and in our own what we're doing here. And you have recently made the switch over to starting World Alternative Media. So just coming out in the final of minutes here of the show, let people know a little bit about World Alternative Media and where are the links that people can go. I know you started a new YouTube channel. It's not easy to build subscribers, so tell people the links so they can go to learn more from you.
Well, I ask everyone to check out World Alternative Media on YouTube and on Facebook. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. Basically, I moved from, actually a lot due to some of your advice, Dan, is that when I was out in Vancouver visiting everyone, I just had such an amazing time, and you made the mention to me like, oh yeah, it must suck kind of going around with Winnipeg Alternative Media when you're like in a different province. And I'm like, yeah, it really is. And so I mentioned like, hey, well, I kind of thought of this kind of World Alternative Media idea, and I remember you saying like, yeah, that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. And I kind of went on it because, you know what, if you think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea because you've obviously made some really good choices with independent media over the years. So I started World Alternative Media. The website, worldalternativemedia.com, will be up shortly. Actually, tomorrow I'm doing the first taping of The Wham Show, which will be a 1-hour news show basically with guests all over the spectrum. Oh, man, we've got some great people lined up. And I hope that you'll join us on a show. And
absolutely. Where does that is that'll be for YouTube, or where does it air?
YouTube, and we are basically doing the paperwork for Shaw TV out in Winnipeg too. But I don't know, my luck with Shaw TV over the years hasn't been great, so we'll see what happens. But I also just became a member of Freedom Force International, which is headed by G. Edward Griffin, a legend in my eyes. And, we're doing all this kind of work to bring kind of more voluntarist perspectives out in the open. So, like, I have a friend named John Sneisen, an economist from Norway, which is a predominantly socialist country economically and so on. The GDP is insane there. And he just wrote a book called The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us. And I'm going to be doing a lot of work with him, G. Edward Griffin, and others, and trying to build this independent media
Well,
empire.
It's not slowing down for you, man. I look forward to seeing more. Keep up the great work. Check the links in the description, folks, and we'll see you next week here on TalkNetwork.com.
Be sure to check out dandix.talknetwork.com.